Lila's hands trembled as she picked at the corner of her lunchbox, willing herself to disappear. If she sat perfectly still, maybe they wouldn't see her, maybe she could just be another shadow in the noisy cafeteria. But some people could always sniff out fear. The way sharks smell blood in the water. She felt them before she heard them, three looming silhouettes casting long, crooked shadows across her table. The cafeteria chatter seemed to hush, just for a heartbeat, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Well, look who's hiding, sneered Roxy, the tallest of the three girls. Her glossy hair fell across her face in a perfect sheet. She brushed it aside with an exaggerated flick and leaned closer. Little mouse, Lila. Lila's stomach twisted. She clutched her cardigan tighter around her, praying she could vanish under the table. Leave me alone, she whispered. Roxy's lips curled into a smirk. Ah, she talks. She turned to her friends, Casey and Mara, whose eyes glittered with the same cold amusement. Did you hear that? She actually thinks she has a say. They laughed. It was the kind of laughter that sank its teeth into your skin and stayed there, long after the echoes died away. Before Lila could react, Roxy's hand shot out. With a vicious tug, she yanked Lila's cardigan aside, exposing the front of her school uniform blouse. Buttons popped loose, clattering on the linoleum. The tear echoed in Lila's ears, deafening and final. She felt the cool cafeteria air on her skin and every pair of eyes boring into her, some pitying, some disgusted, most simply curious. Time splintered. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She tried to pull the fabric closed, but Casey grabbed her wrists and held them down on the table. Such a shy little freak, Casey taunted. No wonder your mom left. Lila went very still. Her mother, it was always her mother they brought up when they wanted to see her cry. But this time, no tears came. Something snapped instead. She didn't know where the strength came from. Maybe it had been growing inside her all along, like a seed pushing up through cold soil. Maybe it was all the nights she spent alone in her tiny bedroom clutching the old stuffed rabbit her mother had left behind. Maybe it was the dull ache of humiliation, building with every bruise and taunt she'd swallowed. She tore her hands free and stood. Her chair screeched backward. A hush fell over the cafeteria. Even the lunch ladies turned to stare. Roxy's smile faltered. Just a fraction. What are you gonna do, mouse? Lila felt her heart slam against her ribs. She could run, she'd always run, but her legs didn't move toward the exit. They bent instead. And before she even knew what she was doing, she drove her knee up in a sharp, vicious arc, catching Roxy square in the ribs. There was a hollow crack. Roxy's eyes went wide. A strangled wheeze burst from her throat. She folded over and collapsed onto the floor. For a moment, no one moved. Lila could hear her own heartbeat, loud and clean and proud. Casey stumbled back, her face slack with shock. Mara gaped, too stunned to even curse. Roxy curled on her side, clutching her ribs, her breath coming in panicked little hiccups. And Lila stood over her, panting, feeling something she had never felt before. Not fear, not shame. Power. The principal's office smelled like stale coffee and floor polish. Lila sat in the hard chair, her uniform shirt hanging in tatters. She pressed a tissue to her scraped knuckles. Every so often she thought she could still feel the impact reverberating up her thigh, the raw, unstoppable force of it. Principal Harris flipped through the incident report. Brow furrowed. Lila, he began in that careful, disappointed voice that made her want to crawl under the chair. You understand this was a serious assault. She met his gaze without flinching. They ripped my clothes off. They tore your uniform, he corrected gently. And I'm not excusing that, they will face consequences. But what you did, it was violent. Lila's lip quivered. Would you have listened if I didn't fight back? You never do. Harris sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew the truth. She'd reported Roxy and her friends before 6 times. In fact, every time, they'd gotten a slap on the wrist. Every time, she'd been told she was overreacting. This time, she hadn't overreacted. She had acted. I will have to call your father, Harris murmured. And you will be suspended pending a review. She nodded. She'd expected this. Lila, he said more softly, are you hurt? She thought of her raw skin, the cold cafeteria air, the way Roxy had laughed as she ripped the fabric away, and then she thought of the crunch, the way Roxy's face had drained of color when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. No, Lila said finally. Not anymore. Her father's car was old and rusted at the edges. When he pulled up, he didn't immediately unlock the doors. He just sat there, staring out at the school. Lila climbed in anyway, hugging the shreds of her uniform around herself. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, he cleared his throat. They said you broke her ribs. Lila looked down at her hands. I didn't mean to, I didn't want them to touch me. Her father's jaw tightened. They ripped my shirt. she whispered, his hand clenched around the steering wheel. She felt a strange surge of gratitude, then gratitude that he was angry on her behalf, that she wasn't imagining how awful it had been. I'm sorry, he said gruffly. I should have done something a long time ago. She didn't trust herself to speak. So she pressed her palm over his where it rested on the gearshift. He squeezed her hand, the calluses rough against her skin. Suspension wasn't as bad as she expected. She'd imagined it would feel like exile, proof that she really was the problem. But on the second day, a knock came at their apartment door. It was Ellie, a girl from her English class. Ellie had always been one of those people Lila envied. From afar she seemed to glide through the world unbothered, her hair always shining, her laugh always real. Ellie held out a grocery bag. Inside were clean uniforms, neatly folded. My mom said you could borrow these, she said, her voice shy, and I wanted to see if you were okay. Lila swallowed. You don't have to. I know, Ellie said softly, but I wanted to. What they did was disgusting. I'm sorry I didn't say something. You didn't have to, Lila began. Ellie shook her head. That's the problem, isn't it? We all think we don't have to. Her eyes filled, and for the first time Lila realized she wasn't the only one who had been afraid. She wasn't the only one who wished she'd fought back. When she finally returned to school, something had shifted. Whispers followed her down the hallway, but they were different, now less cruel, more awed. She passed Roxy's locker. It was empty. Word was that Roxy would be doing her assignments from home until her ribs healed. Lila felt no guilt. She wished she did, but all she felt was the bright, dangerous relief of knowing she had limits, and she had enforced them. At lunch, she went to her usual table. For a moment she hesitated, half expecting to feel the familiar dread, but Ellie was already sitting there, waving her over, and when Lila sat down, no one tried to move her. A boy she barely knew, Dandel, from her math class, walked past and nodded at her. A few other students caught her eye and quickly looked away, like they were embarrassed to be caught staring. She realized, with a thrill of disbelief, that it wasn't pity she saw, it was respect. The days passed. Small things began to change. The principal announced a new anti-bullying policy. Teachers took complaints more seriously. The girls who used to laugh along with Roxy now avoided eye contact. One afternoon, Lila was leaving the library when she spotted Mara at her locker. For a moment, their eyes met. Mara looked away first, her face pale. Lila didn't feel triumph, just a quiet, clean certainty. She was not invisible anymore. Months later, she found herself standing before the gym doors, waiting to speak at an assembly. Her hand still shook, but not from fear, from purpose. When she took the stage, the auditorium fell silent. Hundreds of faces turned to her. She thought she'd feel overwhelmed, but instead, she felt calm. My name is Lila, she began. Some of you know what happened. Some of you think you know. I want you to hear it from me. Her voice didn't waver as she told them about the cafeteria, about the laughter, about the way her uniform had split in front of everyone. She told them about how many times she'd reported it before, how no one helped her, how she'd finally decided she wasn't going to be afraid anymore. She told them about the knee strike, about the crack. And when she finished, she looked out at all of them and said, I don't want anyone to think violence is the only way, but sometimes, standing up for yourself looks like not letting people hurt you again. Sometimes, it's the only way to make them stop. The applause was hesitant at first, then it grew. She didn't think she'd ever forget the sound of it. It was the sound of people seeing her really, seeing her hand, not looking away. That night, when she got home, she found her father waiting in the kitchen. He held up a battered cardboard box. I found this in storage, he said. Inside was the stuffed rabbit her mother had given her when she was born. She hadn't seen it since the move. She ran her fingers over the worn fur. Her father cleared his throat, his eyes wet.